they rank the most influential kind of figures and I guess interviewers, hosts, DJs, radio personalities, whatever you want to say, streamers, all together, just kind of personalities in general that are kind of the most influential among hip hop and, you know, the culture and the community. And it's caused quite a bit of a stir, as of course, lists always do this, and people always kind of get in their feels about where they're ranking. And if they're on the list, if they're not on the list, who's above them, who's below them. So like, they know what they're doing. They do lists because they want to create kind of conversation and controversy, because it always does and it never fails. And yeah, so it's an interesting conversation because with the explosion of podcasts and streams and everything, like there have been an endless amount of people and figures kind of running to a microphone and a camera to kind of speak about the culture, especially hip hop, because it is pop culture. I mean, basically at this point, it is basically pop culture. So a lot of people have been kind of running to these platforms to kind of speak and give their voice to and build a brand and a community and a following around. And some of them have gotten so big that they are almost as big as these artists that they're talking about, if not bigger. So it's definitely become like a lucrative, competitive, very full lane over the past, I want to say like 5 to 10 years. There's always been, you know, the traditional DJs and radio hosts and whatnot. But now with the kind of explosion of streaming and YouTube and podcasts, you've gotten like, you know, people from everywhere kind of coming up into the game from like all these unseen avenues. And you're also seeing like older artists kind of come back around and reinvent themselves and have like full on second careers and taking kind of the role of the people that they had issues with when they were younger. They are literally doing the exact same thing that they had issues with and kind of running with it. So it's been like a very interesting evolution and growth of this kind of lane over the past few years. So of course they ranked everybody, as it says here, who has the most power in hip hop media, from rappers to radios to YouTubers to Twitch streamers and everybody in between. This is their very first ranking of it, and it's their so they're not ranking platforms or shows, just people. Okay, so I guess they're gonna separate, because some shows have like groups of people or 2 people or 3 people. Like for the Breakfast Club, there's traditionally been 3 people, 3 hosts speaking about it, and I guess they're gonna separate the people on the shows themselves. Okay, I don't know how that kind of works, because some shows are so big that you can kind of replace people that are on there. So I guess they're just gonna keep updating it, whatever. And it's only individuals who are public facing, so they won't include things like Say Cheese or the Shade Room. Okay. And they're not including people from the complex programming. I mean, I guess because of, you know, potential bias someone out, but it's also kind of like they are part of the culture, and if they are big in the culture, it's kind of hard to ignore. All right, so this other criteria, their commentary and banter, star power of guests, consistency, viral moments, and integrity of content. Okay, so I guess they're trying to kind of preempt a lot of questions that people probably would have and do have about this list. And one of those is kind of how come legendary radio DJs are so far below like newbies and Twitch streamers, because that is a fair question, considering that radio DJs are the blueprint for kind of talking about the culture and bringing on guests and pushing, you know, hip hop forward. And Twitch streamers are just kind of just now trying to tap into that lane that they basically own for what, 3 decades now. And their explanation is that this is only a ranking of the right now. So they're not taking into consideration, I guess, or at least not very much, legacy and longevity. Okay. All right, let's just hop right into it. Number 25, hip hop. What do they call this? Number 25 in the hip hop media power rankings, and it's Jazzy. So I've only seen like maybe one interview. It's probably not even like an interview, just kind of a clip that she's done. I think she was interviewing J. Cole. She's very young. It says here she's only 12 years old. She's apparently interviewed the likes of Jay-Z, Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole, and Nicki Minaj, and typically it's I think it's been like after shows, at festivals, whatnot. I don't know who she relates to. I don't know who's getting her this kind of access, but clearly she's around somebody or related to somebody that is kind of tapped into the industry, because to be able to get at kind of these artists. And it doesn't hurt that you're a young 12-year-old girl, because it's just a cute thing to see. So like, it's kind of cheating, bro. I'm not gonna lie. Like, being 12 and being like, hey, I want to interview is like far more easy thing to do, and easier thing for these artists to accept than some random 30-year-old guy asking to like interview. So kind of cheating, but she has kind of created a lane for herself. And while the question I did see kind of were pretty generic and whatnot, and it was just more cool for the fact that, you know, it's like this 10, 11-year-old asking these questions. But we'll see how she is in the years to come. As of right now, 25, I mean, I guess if you would have to rank her, I'm not even sure I would even rank her at this point, but she does have quite a following on Instagram and YouTube. Nyla Simone, this is actually somebody that I've just now kind of gotten familiar with thanks to The Breakfast Club. She's been on there kind of providing her playlist, and I guess she is an actual DJ, and she does like, you know, clubs and parties and whatnot, and she kind of is a voice and somebody that they look to for like what's new, what's hot, what's out there, like what a traditional DJ used to be. 65K on Angie. Again, like, she does cool playlists, she does shows, whatever. Apparently she's a panelist on Complex on the Radar, or no, on Rotation Roundtable. But again, she's certainly getting quite a buzz, and she's becoming more prominent among like the media, and like having more of a name recognition in hip hop. I don't know if she should be on this list as of right now. There's plenty of DJs that maybe not as hot now as they used to be, but name recognition wise, influence wise, are just as big, if not bigger. This definitely feels kind of like a reach. Wade Calloway, 22, 23 is, I mean, I gotta say it.
How, Sway?
23, really? Like Sway in the morning, like nationally syndicated for the past 2 decades, one of the faces of MTV for all the early aughts, has some of the most viral, iconic moments in hip hop.
How, Sway?
That one included is kind of crazy that they ranked him this low. I mean, he's coming from freestyle sessions, one of the most iconic, recognizable names and faces in hip hop. Yeah, nah, I'm not gonna agree with that one. That's entirely too low. Number 22, Nardwuar. He definitely deserves to be on top 25 just because his longevity, his influence, his kind of unique position in music. But if we're specifically speaking about hip hop, I'm not sure. He has had some pretty cool, interesting, funny interviews, but for the most part, they're all kind of like shorter form, done for laughs, and great for clips. But if we're gonna say like hip hop personalities, I think like he certainly kind of influenced some people, this interviewing style and kind of like alt humor. And some of his biggest clips and interviews and personalities definitely come from hip hop. I just don't know about like his influence overall within the culture. I don't think it's very much, if at all. But he does cover so much like wide ranging music that it's like, if we're just talking music personalities in general, sure. But hip hop, not sure about that one. Anthony Fantano, Melonhead, or the Needle Drop as some people know him. He kind of set the blueprint for YouTube reviewers, for sure. We definitely get some influence from him. We studied kind of how he does things and see how he kind of runs his community and whatnot, because he has this very unique brand and style that speaks to a community first kind of personality, not just a reviewer or whatnot. Like, he has a whole community based around him and his personality and his brand, more so than just his reviews. I think at this point, as a brand, he's probably almost bigger for his branding and his community than he is for like his reviews. His reviews always kind of create some buzz, and obviously he had the whole super viral moment with Drake in the DMs and whatnot, and that was crazy to see. And he's also like got a lot of buzz for negative buzz, but buzz nonetheless for like his Kendrick and Kanye reviews, particularly My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, which is an absolutely perfect album that he gave a 6 out of 10, which is insane. But it's certainly his brand, and I think he's like well informed, and he's very thoughtful when he puts like his thoughts out there and his reviews and his opinions. And he certainly, like I said, has built his following, and I think his influence is only growing amongst hip hop more and more because of like the branding and the clips and everything else that comes with it. I think this is a good position because outside of the reviews, he does some interviews, but they don't really, move the needle much in terms of like providing anything different or special or any other insight that he has from these artists. They're just cool little interviews, but outside of his reviews, it's just his branding. So, I mean, he definitely deserves to be here, even though he covers all types of music. He certainly deserves to be on this list. Nadeska at number 20. I'll be honest, I haven't kept up with her since Complex's, what was it called? State of the Culture? What that was? No, it was Everyday Struggle with Joe Budden, Academics, which basically just took the First Take formula and brought it to hip hop, which is kind of a genius move because music is straight up barbershop talk that's been going on within the culture forever. But I've only known her to be a moderator. Like, I haven't really known her to voice much of her own opinion. Maybe that's because I don't like follow her and keep up with her, but that also means to me that she hasn't really necessarily broken through on like a certain level. And while she has certainly had some iconic moments, most of them coming from the Everyday Struggle, I just don't see like her influence as of this day right now. So I probably wouldn't put her that high. Adam 22, a very much talked about, much controversial personality these days amongst hip hop and others, and just people in general. I have mixed feelings about him because he certainly built a brand. There's no denying that was built upon hip hop, especially interviewing a lot of young up and coming SoundCloud rappers before anybody else would or could. Like, a lot of people weren't touching these artists or even wanted to sit down with them because they were so kind of different from what we consider to be hip hop. So we kind of needed somebody in this lane to come in and be like, nah, these people are interesting. They have something to say. Let's hear what they have to say. And that's certainly what brought the attention to him, interviewing XXX. And I don't know if he interviewed Tekashi, but he definitely interviewed like Trippie Redd, King Von, people like this before they like really blew up. So he, in my opinion, certainly deserves to be on this list because he is no jumper and his name has become so synonymous and built upon hip hop that he is undoubtedly one of those biggest kind of platforms to this day. But I think that's quickly changing. Like, there's a lot going on. If you haven't been following in, it's all falling apart. Apparently he's no longer basically interviewing any rappers or hip hop people, which is again one of those culture vulture type of accusations that is hard to shake when you do things like that. Like, you literally built your platform off of the backs of people in the culture, and now you are kind of trying to avoid it and sidestep it and do something different, which is your prerogative, but it's also our prerogative to kind of call bullshit on it. And I'm not surprised that people are kind of turning on him because it's the way he kind of handled everything. I don't really have that much opinion about him outside of, the tidbits that we do see about him popping up in the news and on Twitter. It's not a brand I ever really followed or kept up with, but from what I've seen, all the backlash seems very well deserved. 18 Big Boy. Again, another iconic, legendary, historic personality within hip hop and radio and DJs. And while I don't necessarily think he is quite as big or impactful as he used to be, for sure, I think what he's done for like 10, 15 years is undeniable. And to put him this low is kind of a joke. Brandon Jinx Jenkins, the Rap Caviar podcast. I don't really have much opinion because I don't think I've ever sat through or watched or heard an entire clip from Rap Caviar. Peter Rosenberg, another kind of controversial figure amongst hip hop. He also gets that kind of culture vulture label and accusations, but I don't necessarily think that's true. I do think he is a kind of a true connoisseur, fan, representative of the culture, whether you like it or not. And, kind of his career speaks for itself. He's had numerous shows, numerous podcasts, numerous hosting jobs, countless interviews, but they are currently getting rushed by the Breakfast Club and Charlamagne. So I can see why he's dropped down so low. Funk Flex. Again, if we're just going off of pure, career, legacy, meaning to the culture, he's top 5 because some of the most legendary freestyles, rants, moments have come from him, and it shows Funk's bombs are a thing. Like, how do you have a bomb sound become like so synonymous to you as a person and personality? I don't think he's quite had as much influence and impact on this newer generation because, quite frankly, most of the newer generation can't rap. So why would they go to Funk Flex's platform to spit when they can't spit in the first place? So I think that had a huge impact on kind of like his influence in the game because bars and lyricism, songwriting certainly took it back to personality. And he is without a doubt one of the OGs who is lyrics first. So that certainly hurt him. So if we're talking about indie right now, I guess I can kind of agree with this. But if we're talking career-wise, legacy-wise, he's top 5. Angela Yee, I don't watch Lip Service, so I can't really speak on her impact outside of the Breakfast Club. And considering that she has left the Breakfast Club, I would have to drop her way much lower on this list, just for the simple fact that we are not going to be hearing from her nearly as much as we did, which was an everyday kind of thing. And I haven't heard many people catching up or following Angela Yee's new show on this channel, and I think that's gonna hurt her significantly, and I think that she should probably way lower on this list. Bro, again, if we're just talking Korean legacy and meanings to the culture, he would be top 5. But he's one of those older DJs who really has had a hard time adjusting to the new generation. He is the definition of kind of an old head. He likes his music a certain way, he likes his rap a certain way, and this new generation is not that way, and they have not connected with them, and he has not connected with them either. So they have certainly been kind of not avoiding, but taking their biggest moments, their biggest kind of platforms, or their biggest, like, you know, interviews to other platforms, notably the Breakfast Club. And because he's been so stubborn to kind of like adjust to the times and embrace different kinds of sounds and styles and personalities within hip hop, I think this has certainly dropped his impact and influence in the culture to a massive degree from where it was before. I mean, Angie is Angie. Again, she's one of those legacy acts whose name is so etched in the stones of hip hop, especially when it comes to journalism and interviews and radio hosts. I mean, just look at the infamous, you know, Jay-Z Ether reveal. Like, that was a moment in hip hop that I don't think anybody else will ever get in their careers or within the culture, because that is a once in a lifetime type of moment. She's had numerous ones like that, and she's well respected, well loved within the culture, and her kind of ties to the industry are run really deep amongst every artist that you can think of and imagine. But outside of like those early aughts, late 90s, she really hasn't had much, I don't think, impact within the culture itself. People don't really look to her to see who's next, who's hot, who should we kind of checking for. They've went to other places. Jason Lee, yeah, I don't know. Is he really hip hop? I think for the most part, it's mostly pop culture and gossip and tea. And while that is certainly a place amongst hip hop because it is pop culture, I don't think if we're speaking of hip hop as a culture, I don't really think his impact is very much, and I quite honestly wouldn't have put him on this list in the first place. Math Hoffa at number 10 is just entirely too early. I think that he's rightfully has his name buzzing because he has had some great shows, some great interviews, some great guests, and he's really built something special, and he's really turned his career into something that I don't think I ever saw coming, or a lot of people. And he has a unique perspective amongst, you know, music and the industry and these people in general because of how he was himself a part of it. And while I don't think it's quite as, you know, impactful or influential in terms of like other acts and other people following in his footsteps, I do think he gets some like incredibly interesting stories and clips. DJ Vlad, quite honestly, is too low, and I hate to say it myself, considering I'm not like the biggest fan of him as a person in general, but it's hard to deny what his platform has done. He has provided some of the greatest interviews to have come out over the past like 10 to 15 years amongst people in hip hop, and he's given like all these older legacy acts a place to come and really kind of tell their story unlike any other place. And he's basically the blueprint for kind of like this YouTube interview space, especially when it comes to like the culture. Nobody else has done it and built it quite like him. And he's got like an empire straight off of interviews. And like I said, you might not like him personally. A lot of people don't, and I'm kind of included on that list. You can't deny his influence. Like, people run to his platform to talk about anything and everything. His clips consistently go viral. People are consistently like referencing him. Number 9 is entirely too low. I hate to say it myself. Elliott Wilson, I mean, again, I'm kind of legacy act industry connected person who is very well connected amongst the industry and has access to the biggest artists out there. And while he does have some kind of decent interviews, I think for the most part they're all fluff. Most of his interviews are just straight up industry fluff, softball questions, doesn't push back, doesn't dig too much, which makes it kind of like an okay watch, but nothing that I ever really hear people kind of running to or pointing to as like iconic moments and iconic like interviews within the culture. So if he's mainly an interview person at this point, I don't really see how I can kind of rank that high when his interviews don't create that much buzz. Koresha, this is very much a recency biasy on this list, and clearly she has an audience and a buzz and whatnot. She's only been doing this for like what, 15 episodes, if that, 20 episodes, however many she's got out. She certainly has a unique lane within the industry and this hip-hop media for sure, and she has a unique perspective compared to everybody else. I just don't necessarily think that she deserves to be this high. It's too early. It's way too early. Kai Cenat. Okay, this is kind of the first all Twitch streamer that we've gotten on here. So basically, this is kind of the new route. This is the new, I mean, I'm on Twitch myself, so this is kind of like the new kind of breeding ground for the next generation of hip hop influencers or journalists or however you want to say it, because I don't really think that they're going to be running to radio. Certainly not the magazines, certainly not the newspapers, not to the TV. So this is the new route, and he's easily one of the biggest names and personalities within this lane, this live stream lane, and he certainly talks about music to a certain degree and has had some pretty big name guests within the industry on his streams. I kind of just picture him more as a personality than like an actual influencer or influential person within the culture. But I can see why he'd be ranked this high. Nori, love Drink Champs for what it is, but if we're like speaking interviews, he has to be top 5 worst interviews with the size of the platform that he has. He's terrible. He's quite frankly a terrible interviewer, but it is kind of a genius idea and platform. Let's get these artists drunk and reminiscing and talking about the past. When you mix kind of that nostalgia and reminiscing with liquor and in a friendly environment, you're gonna get some great clips from it. And he certainly gets some great clips from all this, because a lot of them, quite frankly, can't handle alcohol. Gillian Wallow. Yeah, I'll rank them this high just for the simple fact that they really go in depth with their interviews and their kind of commentary about the culture. And they're very thoughtful, even more so than I would have ever imagined them to be when it comes to certain serious topics. So they can go from having these super serious conversations about things that are happening on the culture and the streets or whatever. And then they can also get goofy and just joke and crack jokes and talk about anything. And that is a very difficult kind of balance to maintain within a kind of podcast or interview form and still have it flow naturally and normally. And they do an extremely good job with that. And there's a reason why their numbers are so crazy within the short amount of time that they've been out. So quite honestly, I'd probably have them top 3 at this moment. Charlamagne, easily. I mean, come on, he's kind of the blueprint for a lot of these personalities coming out. Akademiks in particular, he is a little Charlamagne for sure. He kind of made it okay and cool for like these thugged out street dudes to kind of talk about the culture and kind of involve themselves in the culture. because even when you talk about like Funk Flex and Ebro and all of them, they still kind of have a persona as being from that life, or at least adjacent to that life, that they can kind of speak about it. But he is a true kind of Big J journalist when it comes to hip hop, and he, like I said, he made it okay for anybody to kind of hop into that lane and be themselves and not have to be portraying an image to kind of speak about these things or speak on these things or speak to these people about the situations. And quite frankly, I don't think there's any other platform out there that's had more viral moments than Breakfast Club over the past 5 to 10 years. So number 3 is probably too low for me. I'd probably put him at number 2. Academics, like I said, a little Charlamagne for sure. Personal feelings and complaints aside, it's undeniable his influence that he's had within the culture. People run to him to about just about everything. Whenever there's like some kind of beef, controversy, or news, he always certainly seems to find himself in the middle of it somehow, some way. And yeah, Mao, he might have built his kind of platform off of basically promoting and pushing violence among like these black teenagers in hip hop, not really truly hip hop artists, but in hip hop. And he really built his whole platform off that to start with. I think he has done a fairly good job of kind of getting away from that. And I don't love most of his opinions. It is undeniable that his opinions do seem to carry weight among the culture these days. Again, much like kind of Math Hoffa, an act who I never saw kind of becoming the thing that he is today, which is this well-respected voice within hip hop. He's always kind of been the punching bag, especially when it comes to rap. A lot of that being self-inflicted, but he has certainly kind of took all the jokes and all the whatever that's been thrown his way over the years and flipped it into something that's easily one of the biggest platforms among hip hop these days. I think his opinions and his voice really travel and carry amongst the industry and amongst artists and amongst fans. And he has built like his own little community around himself that's quite honestly probably bigger than a fan base that he's ever been able to build as, a musician. So like the fact that he's been able to transform himself into this and kind of create a blueprint for other artists to follow, which a lot have certainly been trying to follow, it's undeniable that his influence is massive. Would I put him at number 1? Probably no. I'd probably flip him in academics, but he's certainly top 3 at the moment. So I mean, the list wasn't that bad. There's some people that for sure probably wouldn't have put on there. There's some people that will shift around, and I probably put a little bit more emphasis on legacy because I think it does matter that to have like 20, 30 years within the industry and to have like basically laid the groundwork and the blueprint for all of these new acts and personalities popping up to kind of follow. But overall, wasn't that bad. Was not that bad.